Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stress Shield Resilience and Leadership Summit panel. I am Mark Intrican, and I am honored to serve as your host and moderator today. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your resilience, your leadership, relationships, and future. I also want to thank our five outstanding panelists for sharing their experience, their knowledge, and personal perspectives with us. Pressure rarely arrives one challenge at a time. Professional demands, leadership responsibilities, family concerns, health challenges, and unexpected changes can quickly overlap. And I think we've all seen this in our own lives. Today's conversation is designed to help us understand how we can prepare, protect, respond, recover, and turn pressure into purposeful action. I am a unity-focused leadership strategist, a professional speaker, transformational coach, and founder of the Stress Shield. Through the Achieving Unity Leadership System, which you'll sometimes see as AULS, I also have what's called the LID to GID. That's listening and dialogue, write it down, break it down, review its dependencies, and get it done. The leadership execution framework, and as I mentioned, our Stress Shield. I help individuals, teams, and organizations strengthen unity, resilience, communication, and coordinated action. Too many people think of unity as a soft skill. It's not just helping someone off the steps, off the curb, or out of the car, pulling their chair out for them. It's much more than that. It is a leadership discipline that every one of us needs personally and professionally, from our home relationships up to our chief executive officers. My work begins by helping people understand their current reality. From there, we identify what matters, break challenges into manageable actions, and bring people together to create stronger outcomes. I created this summit because resilience is not something we must begin developing after a crisis. We can prepare before the pressure becomes overwhelming. We can protect what matters most, respond more clearly, and build the support needed to recover and move forward. The Stress Shield does not promise a life without pressure. It helps us develop the knowledge, preparation, relationships, and actions needed to move through pressure successfully, one reality at a time. Before we begin, I want to recognize two people who helped make this summit possible. They demonstrate something central to the Stress Shield. We manage pressure more effectively when we have knowledgeable, dependable people supporting us. Renee Rose Bucktwan has been my trusted right arm for nearly 2 years. She's my driving force behind my weekly podcast, my recordings, videos, newsletters, and presentations, especially like this one. Renee, thank you so much. And then Renz Tupalan joined me this year and has become the driving force behind our website. Much of what you see online reflects his expertise and his commitment. So Renee and Renz, thank you both for everything that you do and for helping bring today's summit to life. So quickly, today's summit is a fun, and please don't forget that three-letter word, fun, informative, yet guided conversation, not a series of formal presentations. I will begin by asking our panelists questions related to their experience and expertise. We will then bring their perspectives together and, as time permits, answer questions from the audience. Please place your questions in the chat as they occur to you. Although we may not reach every question, we will be able to address as many as possible. So I encourage you to listen to one idea that you can apply immediately. We do not have to solve every challenge today, but we can begin by identifying our next purposeful action. So let me go around, and each of our guests will have 45 seconds to introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do. So let's start with Mike Van Pelt. Mike, how are you today?
Great, Mark. Thanks for having us all on. This is such a great honor to be with everybody. I am a Christian men's life coach and the founder of American Family Renaissance and True Man Life Coaching. And so I do a lot of men's mentoring. I have a podcast called the True Man Podcast. speaking, authoring, and whatever other title my team seems to be throwing at me these days. But I just enjoy helping men be better for not only themselves but for their families, so that we can really build the American family and help drive God, family, and country and bring it back to this country. But thanks for having me on, Mark.
Mike, that's excellent because so many times it seems that we have forgotten that and to start bringing things back to the family and us all coming together. Thank you for being here.
You bet.
Next, let's talk to Rachel. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Mhm. Well, I am an intuitive healer and I work a lot in the neuroscience and universal laws with my clients and in the teachings that I do. But I also have 6 children and we are a neurospicy family. So our stress shields are full and intact and pretty lively over here. But it's something that I'm very passionate about teaching people, especially my children, and then branching out from there is just really that piece of how to regulate our own nervous systems, how to be using neuroscience to live the most authentic version of ourselves without having constantly feeling like we're just in fight or flight state of mind. So, yeah,
Impressive. Thank you. Rachel, appreciate that. 6 kids. That's quite a family.
it sure is.
All right, next. We'll go into the ages of each of the children probably later. All right, let's go to Keith. Keith, how are you today?
Doing great, Mark, and yourself?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
We're all asking you how you're doing.
That's
Well,
appreciated.
I'm a retired author. I call myself a master storyteller. Um, I am a volunteer at a ski resort in the wintertime at Winter Park. I am was a professional cyclist and raced for 12 years. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I've traveled the world over and love to travel. And as often as I can, I'm in my gym. But most notably lately, other than my YouTube channel, Active Aging with Keith, I'm a Formula One and IndyCar corner marshal. And that has kind of started to take a lot of things over in my life these days, which is pretty good. I really enjoy it. So I don't have anything that's keeping me bored. Let me put it that way.
Sounds like an exciting lifestyle, Keith. Great. Thank you for sharing. Next, let's go to Mindy. Mindy, how are you today?
I am doing really well, and I'm so excited to be here, Mark. So thank you for inviting me and all of the other wonderful folks we have on the panel today. I am a parent educator, a mom of 4 grown adults, and also grandma of 3, as well as I call myself the brain resilience builder. And so what does that mean? So I work with families, educators, and organizations that work with families on how to build resilience. And we do that through personality insights as well as looking at the brain health. And as Rachel was talking about, like using neuroscience to really break down everyday situations that we find ourselves in so we can function at our full potential and hopefully build better connected relationships with our family members and other people, as well as with ourselves to be able to understand what stress does to us and how we can overcome that in our lives.
That is excellent, Mindy. I appreciate that because there's so many of us that don't know what stress is. And it's so great that you're doing this, especially on a child level. All right, next, let's talk to Dr. Sina. Dr. Sina,
Mhm.
how are you today?
I am doing wonderfully blessed to be alive today and in this moment. How are you?
Oh, the day gets better every moment. I just love that.
And let me share with your audience just a little bit about me. I am a 21-year veteran. I am
Thank
was
you.
a high school teacher for a little while. I am a retired federal employee. I am an author and I am a business owner. And what I do nowadays, when I'm not volunteering, is I have a business called Senior Solutions, and we really work through coaching to help folks find their best solutions to whatever thing that they need conquering.
That is impressive. And I do want to tell you, thank you again for your service to the country. I appreciate
Yes.
everyone that helps us put together the freedoms that we have today. Now, something I do want to talk about real quick. Anyone here that is on the live streaming, we're about to cut the live streaming off. We're going to keep this into us or everyone that signs on, be able to talk to the guest and be able to ask questions. But our live streaming is going off. But if you do want to get into the questions, if you do want to get into the meeting itself, go out to www.markentrican.com/summit. www.markentrican.com/summit and join right back in. We'd love to have you. All right, quickly, I'm going to talk about the framework. And we want to prepare before pressure becomes overwhelming. We want to recognize what may be coming, identify what we can control, and create and practice a response plan. Preparation does not remove every challenge, but it does give us a stronger starting point when challenges arrive. And in doing that, we want to protect what matters most in life and in leadership, because we are all leaders. A lot of times when we talk about being people or being individuals, in that definition, we are all leaders in what we do and how we work going forward. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being the leader. Let's go down to the first question, what we can do with the process. Oh, first, let me talk about the shared panel discussion. We're going to talk about each of us. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, move around the room, and then as we go through the 2 questions each, and then open it up for more and open it up to the audience. So if there's anyone in the audience that wants to ask questions, we'll jump into that also, because we'll go to some useful transitions and understand what we're doing and how to turn that purpose into powerful action. So if you don't mind, let's go to Mindy. And as we look at the things that she talked about, and I think all of us talked about, mainly recognizing pressure beneath the surface. Recognizing pressure beneath the surface. Mindy, can you help me about what is happening beneath the surface when a child or an adult get down to just that 1 minute? But what is happening beneath the surface when a child or an adult appears resistant, defiant, or emotionally overwhelmed?
Hmm. I love this question, Mark, because it really gets us to stop for a moment and think about what's happening beneath the surface. And behavior is what we can see at the moment. So a lot of times we respond to that, not being able to take into account what's driving that behavior. What is that behavior trying to tell us? And so this is the brain's way of communicating that something underneath might feel hard, it may feel scary or threatening, or just simply too much, because being overstimulated in today's world is so easy. I know it is for me anyway. So when and we've hearing more and more about this now, about what happens when we are stressed, that when that brain just detects stress. And I think it was Rachel who mentioned that we have responses to that. It's the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And the reason why we're doing that is because our brain is trying to protect us. It goes into defense mode, right? It's like, and I think about this when you have a castle or you have your home, and you think about like that shield coming down and it's protecting us, so that it's that barrier that's helping to protect us from more possible danger. So what's happening then is the reasoning part of the brain goes offline, so to speak. And so we can't tap into that part of it. We're tapped into the part at that moment that is really all about just protecting us, keeping us safe. And, so in that moment when we're trying to approach either our child or a parent or a coworker or someone else in our lives, and we're trying to reason with them, they are not able to access that part of their brain. And so that's when we can butt heads. We can wonder, well, what's going on here? Why are they being resistant? Why are they being defiant? Or whatever label we're putting on it. But it's really about what's going on inside the brain.
I like that. I like the way you talk about what's inside the brain. And isn't all of that inside the brain what we've learned, even through culture? Great question. Great answer. I like that. All right, next, talk about the same subject, recognizing pressure beneath the surface. Let's go to Dr. Sina. You're working with the military and such a vast, different numbers of people. What is happening beneath that surface when a child or an adult appears? I'm sorry, that's one question. What must a leader, start seeing it, what must a leader notice or ask to recognize when a team member is struggling, even while continuing to perform? What must a leader notice or ask to recognize when a team member is struggling, even while continuing to perform?
Mm. Yes, thank you for the question. I love it. I think a leader needs to recognize the behaviors that they see and don't ignore it because everybody is important to the team. And for example, if something's happening with the team and they are noticing that maybe the person is acting a little different than they would normally do, I think that the leaders should investigate that in a safe way. Now, what is safe? Safe means stop, look, listen. I learned that years ago, but just stop what you're doing right now for a moment. Look, see people, see them as whole and unique and contributors, and listen. Listen for what's being said and what's not being said. One piece I'd like to add to that is to simply ask. Ask and make space for people to be seen and to contribute. Thank you for the question.
That is great. That's a great answer too. I mean, Dr. Cena talks so much about ask. That's one of the things that I work on because too many times, do you feel that we also assume a lot? And then when we assume, we sometimes make assumptions about what's being said if we don't ask for clarity.
I absolutely think that. And I absolutely think that asking allows the leader opportunity to check their own bias because we may be seeing it through our lens and not necessarily through the person's lens that we may have curiosity about.
That is so true. Thank you for adding to that because it's one of those things such as road rage.
Mm.
Sometimes that road rage comes along. We don't know what kind of day that person has had.
Mm.
We want to look down road rage because it needs to stop. But we
Hmm.
also have to think a little bit about where they are, where they're coming from too, don't we?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to responding constructively. This is always a challenge for it, especially for me, to think about constructively and building. That's that organizing process. As we do that, responding constructively, Rachel, what practical process can move someone from emotional reaction toward clarity and an intentional response? Rachel, what practical process can move someone from emotional reactions toward clarity and an intentional response?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in two parts. And the first one is the thing that we like to resist the most, which is actually completing the emotional cycle. So if you're emotional about something, we tend to want to stuff that down and try to just get to clarity very quickly. But then that emotion will live in our body and it's still a driver in whatever is going on and will cause us to be reactive later on down the line, especially when we are trying to reach a solution. So the first thing is you want to actually feel that emotion completely to the full, which usually only takes about 60 to 90 seconds. So get it out, rage it out, talk it out, whatever you need to do, cry for a second, but allow the emotional cycle to actually complete and leave your body. And you can learn about that a lot by watching animals. They shake, they run, they move the actual energy out of their body. So you can do that as well. And then the second part of that is really looking for the why. And I tend to tell my clients to go 7 layers deep. So we want to know what's underneath the why of the why of the why, because that's where your real clarity is going to come in. That's where it's going to show you what your values are, your priority is, what you're really wanting to get solved in this, whatever's happening. And a lot of times we just go to the surface level solution and then we're not happy. We get triggered again and we have to start over. So if you can go and really get that clarity at the get-go and spend some time with yourself first, then when you come to the table, whether it's a spouse, a child, a partnership, or in your work life, you can come with actual clarity and go, this is what I'm seeing, and what solutions can we come up with that actually meet the core, that clarifying piece of what's really going on. So complete the emotional cycle and then really seek to get that 7 layers of why type of clarity in what you're asking for.
Wow, Rachel, that's an excellent idea. And I like that part where you said come into yourself first. And that's so important that we do that before we act or react. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, responding constructively. Let's go back to Mindy on this one. What does a practical pause and reset look like when the adult is also stressed?
So
What
one
does
of
a
the things,
practical pause? Go ahead.
yes, yes. Well, and I really like this question because so often, and I'm guilty of this, that we think that we need to solve whatever the situation is or the problem in the next 10 seconds. It's like it's immediate, it demands our attention. But the reality is that we have some wiggle room here that we don't need we don't need to respond to something right away. Unless, we're in danger, obviously. So I do want to put that caveat in there. So a practical pause and reset would be to allow yourself to have that moment. And like Rachel had said so beautifully, being able to give yourself a chance to complete that emotional cycle. And, she mentioned 60 to 90 seconds. And how often do we think that this is going to take an hour, 2 hours, 2 weeks for us to get over whatever the feeling is that's attached to a situation? But it can even be something as simple as, you know, moving your shoulders up and down, taking a breath, tapping is another option. Just grounding yourself by putting your feet on the floor. Whatever it is for you that you find comforting in that moment is actually going to give you a chance to be able to ground yourself and give a little bit of a reset. And the second thing is that we don't have to use a whole lot of words in the moment, because if you're like me and when my kids would do something and I wanted to just work through it, I would push onto them all these explanations and these words, and they weren't capable of hearing it in the moment. And I wasn't really delivering it in the most genuine, authentic way. I was still trying to get my point across. So if we can pause, take that moment to get ourselves together, it also gives our kids or our partners, co-workers a chance to pause and do the same thing. So we're modeling that for them.
That's excellent. I like that point you're making about modeling that for them. Because how many times do all of us, someone's talking too much? Let's get the points across, right? Don't have to talk too long, politely, but get those points across. I like that. Thank you, Mindy. All right, Mike, what about leading through adversity? Talk about you and working with fathers and a lot of adversity in today's world. What makes asking for help an act of strength and responsible leadership? Mike, what makes asking for help an act of strength and responsible leadership?
This is such an interesting question because the actual answer is it takes courage to say, I don't have it all figured out. I mean, and we often don't. And, you're not going to fake it through another year because your kids are watching, just like we're talking about here. Your family's watching, your employees are watching. And so it's important that we understand that weakness isn't pretending you have it all together. Uh, Weakness is a man who's the guy that is drowning, still smiling while the photo's being taken, right? Asking for help means that you've stopped protecting your image and really started protecting your family, your team, and your actual future. See, that's leadership right there. That is the actual leadership. So think about it this way. Every strong leader that you respect and someone has somebody that has spoken to their life. We've all had this. And maybe in many cases, it was a pivot. It changed our lives. But nobody builds something that lasts alone by themselves. My whole message about the power of asking for help, I don't consider it a real soft idea. I think it's the same principle that scripture teaches us over and over, that we were never designed to carry everything alone, that two are better than one, and that asking for help is a man saying that He trusts something bigger than his own strength. And I think that that's the exact posture that God wants every man to come into.
That's excellent. Wants every one of us to come into that ability. I like that, Mike. Thank you. As we talk about leading through adversity on this process, let me go back to Dr. Sina for a second. Maybe ask you, what practical leadership rhythm helps a team prepare for adversity, maintain trust, and recover together? Dr. Sina, what practical leadership rhythm, the rhythm that helps a team prepare for adversity, maintaining trust, and recovering in unity together?
What practical leadership rhythm? What a fascinating question. A rhythm, I would say, that allows the team to know what's next, what's expected. Now, scenarios are different as they are, but my battle rhythm is one where the team knows what I'm thinking. They know that Dr. Sina is going to ask questions. They know that Dr. Sina is going to listen to what they say. They know that Dr. Sina is going to take the information and make some type of move. That's a rhythm. That's a rhythm of expectation, and that's a rhythm of clarity. That's a rhythm of trust. And these rhythms help people perform better because then they don't have to figure out who's on first or what's on second or how is she going to blow up. Unnecessary. So I say to that, to establish a battle rhythm of trust, a battle rhythm of knowing pretty much what the leader is going to say, what the leader may need to know, so that the team can move forward with clarity and not have that big question mark looming over their heads.
I like that because it seems that that would help eliminate some assumptions with the
Mm,
team working together.
mm.
All right, Dr. Sina, thank you. Good point. All right, let's go to Keith on this one. Keith, we're going to be talking about reinvention and forward movement. Reinvention and forward movement. That's one thing I've known about you over the years is that you're strong in that forward movement. So when someone feels lost after a setback, they felt a loss after a setback or a life change, how can curiosity help them regain direction? When someone feels lost after a setback or a life change, how can curiosity help them regain their direction?
Thanks, Mark. As you know, I've got what I call my TRIP system, which involves tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose. And this question feeds right into imagination. Curiosity and imagination go hand in hand. And I think that most people don't look at it as a physical aspect. They think of it only as a mental. But what do we do as athletes, as I've raced bikes and skied and whatnot for so many years? How do we look at things like this as an athlete? We look at it as how do we plan for it? And as Dr. Sina said, when you're in the military, you can plan for everything that's going to pop up, but things are going to pop up that you don't expect. And that's where curiosity and taking the mental challenge of looking at it with imagination, of looking at all the different options you probably have, because curiosity and imagination will work hand in hand for almost anyone if they can calm down long enough to be able to look at the situation. I used to
Wow.
teach meditation years ago, was called alpha brainwave training in the 70s. Can you imagine using that title today? Anyway, it was the kind of thing where we were trying to reach the alpha brainwave state of mind so that we would be calm. We could make the decisions that we needed to make on the fly. If it was something that occurred quickly, if it's a transition you've got time to be able to think about, then obviously plan for it. Bring that physical training in and that mental training in to plan for whatever options you've got and how you can pull them all together into a viable program moving forward. Transitions oftentimes are nothing more than just an obstacle that gives you a chance to think. And we don't teach thinking much anymore. So you've got to slow people down because they'll think better when they're in that alpha state. So hope that answered your question.
That does. It was very good. Now, I know this. I've talked to you many, many times. But can you talk about TRIP one more time? TRIP, please.
I got lost climbing in the Himalayas in 1995. And in writing that book, I was journaling, is what I was doing. And then the journal turned into a book. Uh, Trip came out of it because I suddenly noticed that all of the attributes that I was writing about were those four words. And so I started looking as I became a professional speaker and an author, how I could use those four words moving forward and help people through their difficult times. And tenacity is one of those elements. Resilience, we're talking about here today. Imagination is huge when you're looking at anything in life, trying to figure stuff out. And lastly, purpose, which is the one thing that I'm 78 now, and I've had to reinvent myself several times to be able to find the purpose that would keep my curiosity going. And that was when I came up with my YouTube channel, and it's occupying a lot of my time because I love editing. I really like the technology behind it. So having curiosity and having imagination really does pull you forward. And my trip system is just sort of evidence of that.
That's great. Thank you. We'll go over that more later, but again, just the acronym TRIP and what those four words are. That's what is so important. We'll go through that more later. Thank you. Okay, staying with that, reinvention and movement forward movement. Maybe we go back to Rachel on this one. Maybe we can do a brief follow-up. Rachel, what helps a person turn new insight into sustained action?
So
Brief.
let me just think about that for a second because I thought we were going in a different direction, which actually I'm just going to take it in a different direction. I think when we're talking about what Keith was saying, when we're talking about imagination, that really plays a huge part in when we're feeling disconnected from self and we're trying to make an action out of clarity. Where we pull in that imagination piece, I call it perspective shifting. So a lot of times we'll think that we have to ignore certain responsibilities, that we're not able to incorporate the different facts of the thing, where we've got to consider all these things. And we kind of stack them all from a neuroscience perspective. We tell our brain that it's all important, it's all urgent, and it's all fact-based right now. And so when we get into that state where our whole thing is distorted. And so if you can go back to that curiosity piece, that imagination piece, it'll allow you to start to flip your perspective and really gain a new insight so that you can move forward with clarity in whatever you're dealing with. So an example that I had on this is if I'm on a cliff, that's the fact, right? If I say the cliff is high, that's a generalization. That's a distorted something that's coming from how I feel about the cliff because it's not a fact. The fact is actually how high the cliff is. I'm perceiving it to be high, but it could be 3 feet and I could say it was high, right? So we just have to get clear on what is actually a fact and then what can be shifted. So the perspective is the part that we can shift. So if I'm interpreting this as this cliff is high or this problem is too big, then I'm telling my brain and I'm informing myself how I'm going to respond to it. If I can start to approach it with curiosity, imagination, and shift that perspective, I can now look at that cliff or that problem through a new angle, which will allow me to open up new solutions and a new perspective so that I'm not so triggered in dealing with it or pigeonholed.
I like that because you're opening up your mind to different thoughts and different ideas, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mindy, can I get you to talk about that also? We're talking about reinvention and forward movement. Brief follow-up. What helps a person turn new insight into sustained action? What helps a person turn new insight into sustained action?
I really like this question because and so far it's really building on everything that uh, has been talked about so far. And I think that one of the things that helps for sustained action is, first of all, connecting with ourselves. And that's that clarity piece. It's to be able to shift our perspective, to know enough about ourselves. And Senna talked about this too, like in leadership, it's, having the people around you know what to expect. And that's really part of what we can do with ourselves, is knowing what to expect from ourselves, pushing ourselves a little bit. And I think about Elastigirl here from The Incredibles, and I may be aging myself. That was one of my favorite movies when my kids were young. And the reason why I bring up Elastigirl here is because she continued to stretch herself and to find solutions and be curious about how she can show up. Now, did she have an emotional reaction to that? Yes, she did, as she was stretching. And so I think that that's really part of it, is recognizing, again, Rachel's just described it so well. What are the facts of the situation, and what are the things that we actually can do? Because oftentimes we feel stuck and we don't realize that there is something else we can do differently. And so that's where that pause comes in. That's where the opportunity to realize that we don't need to have the answer right away. Again, of course, unless we're, like Rachel said, on that cliff, and then we may want to process that information a little bit sooner. But that's the beginning of it.
That's well said. And I appreciate that because it's so true, because that pause can be powerful. That pause can be powerful if we just give ourselves time to think about something for a second. So, okay, let's go back. Let's go down to the practical next step. And for this one, I want to go over here to Mike and talk about what is a safe, realistic first step for someone who wants to rebuild confidence and momentum. What is a safe, realistic first step for someone who wants to rebuild confidence and momentum?
Well, I think it's good to sit with yourself and ask yourself these questions. And I recommend something that we don't talk enough about in men's circles. It's already been mentioned here. We don't talk enough about journaling and getting things down on paper and writing. And I will tell you, I don't consider myself to be a great writer, but you don't have to be to journal. So let's get that out on the table. But what has happened to me, or what I've experienced and I've seen other men experience, is that it becomes a very cathartic experience to get these things down on paper. Now, why do I bring that up? It's a great starting point to start setting your goals. What matters to you? What is your why? So we're talking a lot here about being curious. Be curious about yourself. Ask yourself a lot of questions about yourself. It's okay to do that, okay? But if the joke is if you answer back, but we want you to answer back. We want you to get it down on paper. Really start asking yourself questions about you. Honor you. That's not selfish. Some people would say, well, it's selfish. It's not selfish. Take the time, invest the time in yourself to discover what matters most for you. See, one of the things that is happening in our society and our culture right now is we're moving so fast, we allow ourselves to get caught up in it. And when we get caught up in it, we don't slow down enough so that we can speed up. And one way we can slow down is to start getting our goals, our thoughts, our why, our purpose down on paper. Incredibly important thing to start doing.
That's great. I love what you're saying. Now, this is going to be the toughest question here because it's going to be unfair to some and more open to others. But here, just to close this round, the starting round, I'm going to ask each of you. I'm going to let you go. Who wants to go first? But what is one action attendees to this summit could take this week to strengthen, based on the things we've talked about already, their stress shield? Talked about all kinds of different things about stress and what we've gone through here, practical next steps, about reinvention, forward movement, leading through adversity, responding constructively, moving from isolation or uncertainty towards support, and recognizing pressure beneath the surface, sorry. Recognizing pressure beneath the surface. So as we look at that and we think about strengthening everyone's stress shield so they can take that stress away, what is one action the attendees can take this week to strengthen their stress shield? Who would like to go first? All right, Keith, go ahead.
This was one that I wrote out. On the other side of this screen is a great big whiteboard with all my notes on it. So this was one I wrote out a lot about this afternoon before we got on here today, and it's self-care. Mike alluded to this, and especially with journaling and other things. From a men's perspective, sorry, ladies, men don't take care of themselves. We don't want to go to doctors. We hate to go to dentists. We don't want to work out. We don't want to follow our nutrition. There's all kinds of things that we don't like to do that we have to find ways to make it happen. And self-care, once you recognize the importance of what it was, then you suddenly really realize I could have been doing this all along. Last year, I had 3 heart attacks, and I've raced
Wow.
bicycles and raced cars and skiing, and I thought I was physically fit, but I had a protein in my body that was clogging up my arteries that wasn't cholesterol. It was something else that nobody ever tests for.
I'm
So,
glad you're doing better.
thank you. Me too. So self-care is so important. You've got to go in for those yearly physicals. You've got to get that blood work done, especially after 45 or 50 when things start changing so dramatically. So I don't want to lean on that real heavily for you, Mark, but that would be the place I would tell people to start first. If they've got a few hours to think about what they can do to be, and they've really hit a stressful time, look inward. Like Mike said, find God, journal it, write about it, and it will help you find a solution.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's great. Rachel, I think you were raising your hand also. Did I see that correctly?
You did.
Let's go
So
down with you. What's one action attendees can take this week to strengthen their stress shield?
yeah, so in our family, because I said we have 6 children, and my husband and I came up with this system that I give to my clients all the time, and we get really clear on what our priority is for the season. Your season of stress might be a week, it might be a month, it might be a quarter, whatever that might be. Sometimes we make our priority list for the entire year, but whatever the season is that we're going, what is coming ahead looks a little scary, and we're starting to feel stress about it. We will go in and get really, really clear on our top priority, the priority that we're going to share as a family. And then we use that priority as a filter system. And what happens is that everything then runs through that filter system. So like for right now, my kids are getting ready to go to school for the first time. I've got multiple drop-offs within a 5-minute window, 15 minutes apart. It's stressful because I can't be in 2 places at once. And then we had
Right.
this panel that happened to fall during pickup time. And because our dynamics had changed, I was like, oops, I cannot be in 2 places at once. But what is my priority? And so we had set this priority filter already. So I know that the business and growing my audience and speaking about these things is my top priority in this season, even over my children's schooling and education. So I pulled my son out an hour early from school, but it was an easy decision because I have that filter in place. And so that allows me, when you look at your priority, you can go, okay, what solutions actually align? And it helps you to make them really quickly. So I could go, I either pick up my son late. That's not really an option. I get in trouble. I pick him up early. That's a doable solution because I can be on the panel. I show up late to the panel. That does not align with my priorities. Okay. And that makes the decision really easy when I am processing through my solutions. So I would say get really, really clear on your priority and then start it as a filter system because it'll take some of those other decisions and take the pressure off.
I like that. And I like the part that you said about your priorities, because a lot of us don't think enough that we do have priorities, whether we like it or not. And choosing those priorities can be a challenge. Good point. Okay, who wants to go next? All right, Dr. Sheena.
I am so in love and enjoying what I am hearing. For our panelists today, I want you to consider that the other person on the other end has a right to feel how they feel. That's what I want you to walk away from and recognize when your blood pressure gets to boil or when you're feeling a certain way, think to yourself, they absolutely have a right to feel that way. Doesn't mean you agree with it, but it will help relieve if you recognize that they too have a right to feel just like you feel about that thing. That's what I want them to walk away from today.
That's great. Again, that ability to understand that about others it does help us relieve our stress shield. I like what you're thinking. Yeah. Okay. Mindy, Mike, who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. I'm going to take a little bit different angle here than I was originally thinking because I'm hearing so many great answers. But I think for what I've seen in so many people, I think you need to identify your fears. Identify them. What's holding them back? So I commonly talk about four, although I could talk about many more, like fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of vulnerability, fear of unworthiness. I think you have to call these fears out because the bottom line is they are adding stress to your life. There's no question about it. In fact, it may be dominating. Those fears may be dominating your life to the point where you're just flat out stuck. And so I think one of the more important things you can do is call out those fears and then, put a plan together to run towards them rather than run away from them. Now, I will tell you one of my biggest fears in life is a fear of heights. I have no intention on fixing that. None. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with it. But there are other things in my life. Technology hasn't ordinarily been my friend. But if I'm going to be a successful business person and help other people achieve their best, there are tools that I need to learn how to run to. And where I'm not good at them, I need to find the people that can help me get better. Or maybe it's something I give somebody else to. But I don't fear technology. A lot of people fear technology, and I'm using a real basic thing there. But, I think we need to identify our fears and then put a plan together on how to overcome them. Because if you don't, you're just going to be held back.
That's an excellent point, Mike, because if you don't identify them, they take control, don't they?
They
You don't
they
know what.
most certainly do. That they take control and they take over your life. And so many people. Here's the funny thing: it's so counterintuitive. Like many of the things that we could probably say here. Um, we fall into comfort with our fear. It doesn't tend to make any sense, but it's kind of the human condition. We don't like change. So it's easier to just stay with the fear than to move towards, bettering our best, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. And we'll get into the following our comfort levels with Keith a little bit later, too. All right, Mindy, let's see what you're thinking about this. What is one action attendees can take this week to strengthen their stress shield? What do you think?
Everyone's given such great questions. And so this is what happens when I don't put my hand up right away. So I would say I loved what everyone has said. And one of the things that has really stood out to me is simplification, like keeping it simple. And what happens is when we're stressed, then we start to add in other things like, oh, I'm stressed, and then you're panicked about it. And again, you think that you have to go straight to the solution. And as Keith said, self-care is really important, facing our fears. And we think when we're stressed, maybe we need to do all of that at one time. So you're already in an overwhelmed state. You're overwhelming yourself even more because you're thinking of all the things that you should be doing, you could be doing, you'd like to be doing. And this is what I say, when you keep it simple, you're reducing demand. And when you're reducing demand, then your brain is more available. You have more space in your brain to be able to problem solve. And again, like Rachel had said about prioritizing, then you can take a moment to prioritize. You can take a moment to maybe move your body, even if it's marching from your desk to your car or whatever it is, or you're trying to eat healthier, but you really want a Reese cup. And I say this because I love Reese cups. Um, but maybe you can put peanut butter and some chocolate chips on a piece of celery. Whatever it is, we tend to think that it has to be big and bold and bodacious, but a lot of times the next best step is something really small.
Next step is really small. And that's what we can do is we can take smaller steps, right?
Mhm.
That's the idea to make it to help us go forward. Beautiful. I like that. Okay, now we're going to talk about some things that are more toward, as I see it, sometimes your work and your expertise. But let's go, if we can, back to Rachel for this one. It's an opening perspective. Maybe just clarity while remaining true to themselves? So when stress clouds a person's thinking, what is the first sign that they need to pause and reconnect what is genuinely true for them? So from feeling stuck toward clarity while remaining true to themselves, when stress clouds a person's thinking, what would you think is the first sign that they need to pause and reconnect with what is genuinely true for them?
Yeah, so from this one, I'm going to say that your first indicator that you're starting to operate out of stress and not in clarity or alignment with yourself is how urgent, loud, defensive, or in other words, triggered the story is that you're telling yourself. So are your emotions feeling really triggering? Is your thought process feeling really loud and urgent? And if you're making decisions out of a very loud and urgent place, you are in a reactive triggered state and you're not going to have clarity in your decisions. You're going to feel more stressed because you're then perpetuating a story that usually comes, like what Mike said, it comes out of fear. So we're now catering to the fear and we're trying to solve that problem. And it's like popping up a million fires, trying to put out one and then a million more pop up, right? So my analogy that I use is get to the ocean, which is really just give yourself a pause, a moment to realign with self. And you can tell this almost instantly. If it's your intuition and clarity, the story will almost be non-existent. You'll just kind of have a knowing and a peace moving forward. That's the action that you want to actually take. That's the thing you want to listen to. If you're going in the distorted view, you've got a story, you've got urgency, you've got all of these reasons piling up on you. That's where your stress comes from. There's not clarity there because you're running on the hamster wheel trying to put out a million fires.
Yeah. And how many of us do that?
Everyone.
Exactly. Very well. Very well said. Good answer. Thank you. All right, Mindy, if you don't mind, I'd like to come back to you and on your perspective. And touch a little bit about your book and your work through the stretchy brain framework. You can maybe talk about that a little bit as you start. You help parents and professionals understand the neuroscience beneath stress and behavior. So what is happening beneath the surface when a child or an adult, it's like we talked about earlier, resistant, defiant, or emotionally overwhelmed? So through your stretchy brain framework, you help parents and professionals understand the neuroscience beneath the stress and behavior that they have that's with them. What is happening beneath the surface when a child or an adult appears resistant, defiant, or emotionally overwhelmed? Again, through your stretchy brain framework.
Hmm. Thank you for asking. And this is something that really came from a story that I created with my grandson. And he was so frustrated by his shoelaces. And so we wrote a story together, which is the Sammy Super Stretchy Shoelaces. And one of the things that we did in the book is we went through, like, why are his shoelaces so long? And they just kept getting longer and longer. So this is like this is curiosity, it's deductive reasoning, it's problem solving, and that's all the stretchy brain activities. It's resilience. And so in the book, Sammy, who is actually my grandson, does a lot of deep breathing. And so we talk about that, and I go into schools and I talk about this with the other kids too. So really, the way that you get to that point where you can be resilient is, first of all, you have to work through what you're feeling. And oftentimes, and this is what I share with the families that I work with, and this is that other piece of this, is that we think that the emotion comes from the thought that we have. But oftentimes what happens is that the emotion starts as something that we feel in our bodies. And so this is something that I really enjoy talking to the kids about, because they're like, oh, well, when I feel mad or when I feel frustrated or whatever the emotion is, my heart beats faster, or where, my shoulders might be up by my ears, like I'm wearing them like earrings, or I might be breathing more quickly, or my face flushes. And so giving them those opportunities to look at what they're feeling in their bodies then helps them to be able to identify what's coming next, which is the thought. And when they can name the emotion, then gosh, you've just empowered them and you're empowering yourself too as a parent, as an educator or employer, leader, whoever it is, by having that information, being self-aware.
And opening that door to understanding can mean so much, can't it? I like your book. I mean, I watch it on what you put on the internet. It's very interesting, very impressive.
Thank you.
Okay, next, let's go to Mike. Your perspective, Mike. Your work helps men break isolation and reclaim their God-given identity. Why do so many men try to carry pressure alone? And how can that isolation affect their resilience, leadership, marriages, and families? Your work helps men break isolation and reclaim their God-given identity. Why do so many men try to carry those pressures alone? And how can that isolation affect their resilience, leadership, marriages, and families?
Well, what's interesting about what I'm about to say is nobody ever intended it to be this way. It just kind of the way it turned out, right? Generational things. So the answer to the question is, why do men do it? Well, we were trained to. You see, at the time, from a very young age as boys, most of us got the same message. And we've heard it in 100 different forms. Things like don't cry, don't complain, just figure it out. Nobody ever sits a boy down and teaches him how to ask for help. A lot of the times. They just teach them how to look like he doesn't need it. So by the time a guy, is 35, 45 years old and he's running a household or a team and, this idea of help comes up, it just doesn't feel like an option. It feels like a complete confession of he's failing in life. And that shows up everywhere in his life. Typically, it shows up in his leadership because he starts making decisions from his ego instead of from counsel because he's used to doing everything on his own. It shows up in his marriage because he's managing his wife instead of knowing her. And of course, in fatherhood, it shows up with his kids because they're watching him struggle and not share. And it just gets passed on. And so isolation doesn't just wear a man down, it quietly teaches that next generation to do the same thing. And we just pass it on and pass it on and pass it on. And so there, as I say so often, one of the most important things that a man can do is get curious about himself, right? This has come up a lot. Get curious about himself, learn about himself, and get with other men in small group and learn from each other. Don't do things in isolation.
Don't be afraid to ask questions either, right?
Absolutely.
That's so good. I appreciate you doing that. Okay, next, let's go to Dr. Sina. Dr. Sina, from your perspective, your experience spans the U.S. Navy, executive leadership at ATF, and more than 7,500 hours of coaching. Across these environments, what distinguishes leaders who remain effective through adversity from those who become consumed by the pressure? Again, thank you so much for your service and anyone else on here that has served. Thank you. But your experience, again, spans the U.S. Navy, executive leadership at ATF, and you have more than 7,500 hours of coaching. Across those environments, what distinguishes leaders who remain effective through adversity from those who become consumed by the pressure?
Perspective. A perspective allows one to be able to see what's really happening. And I'm going to give a quick example. If someone finds themselves in a desert, deserts usually are dry, things are happening, dry land, prickly things are happening, could get burned out hot, from the heat. Cactuses represent problems. You pump your head against it, you get prickles, you bleed. All of those things are perspective. And I would say that leaders that are effective recognize that perspective. They recognize they're in a desert. Now, a desert doesn't mean doom, and a desert doesn't mean you like it, but a desert is a desert. And so, having the perspective across all of those that you're in a desert and you're not in that rainforest that you would like to be helps one adjust quickly to what's really going on, separating what they might like, but giving them an opportunity to develop how to navigate in that desert. I think that perspective really is significant for leaders across my career who have remained effective. Is that they recognize when they're in the desert, they recognize when they're in the rainforest, they recognize when they're in the plush garden, and they shift accordingly.
I like what you're saying there when they shift accordingly. Yes, you're in the desert, you're in the rainforest. That's the reality. We're there. But that perspective, as you're saying, what do we do while we're here
Yes.
can change the direction or the benefit of what they can do while they're there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Impressive. Thank you. All right, Keith, from your perspective, now you have reinvented yourself. I've heard your story. I love it. But many times for yourself, thank you for your service as a Vietnam veteran, a racer, a skier, a traveler, an author, and definitely an adventurer. What has helped you view major transitions as the beginning of another chapter rather than the end of your possibilities? Again, you have reinvented yourself many times as a Vietnam veteran, racer, skier, traveler, author, and adventurer. What has helped you view those major transitions as the beginning of another chapter rather than the end of your possibilities?
Mindset. I think it's attitude and mindset that set things apart for me. Every time something has happened in my life and I've had to re-examine where I was and where I was going, I had to turn the obstacle into an adventure. Once I did that, which oftentimes took days, because we all have to work our way through the problem in our mind and find our own path. But once I was able to convert the problem into an adventure, my attitude and my mindset changed. It always lifted me up. As soon as that occurred and was able to grab a hold of it, my energy changed. My energy rose. I became more excited about what I was having to accomplish and overcome. And I think that I have an exceedingly active imagination. It's always been that way my whole life. Um, and my imagination seems to kick in quickly when I see a problem or I'm faced with a transition that I don't want. I suddenly start becoming very imaginative about how I want it to turn out or how it could turn out. And it's with that attitude and imagination that suddenly helps lead me to a place where I'm comfortable with whatever I've got to face. Because a lot of those obstacles were very uncomfortable. And it's that kind of thing that my my signature on the end of my email says, whatever you desire is just outside your comfort zone. And that is really how I've lived my life. So that statement may actually be the answer to your question.
And I thought of that earlier because I know all of you from different perspectives, but I thought about that with the comfort zone. Because how many people, as mentioned earlier, the comfort zone, even if it's wrong or negative, we stick to it, we fall into it. So the benefit, as you're saying, is to get out of that trough, out of that gutter, and get out of that comfort zone and go to that next level. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Now, the next time for our last question, I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to ask you something. But if there's been any question here that you want to touch on again, or if you want a last touch, a last answer, or add on to something you said, please do so during this section. But for this, Mike, let's begin with your perspective. What does some of your perspectives, especially coming in here working with fathers, what do those situations look like in real situations? From your perspective, what does dealing with fathers and the things that you do as far as achieving the unity as I see it and building forward, what do those look like in real situations?
Well, the same could be said of mothers too. Nobody hands you a playbook and says, here how this is how this works. This is how you do this. And but from men's perspective, we don't always do the best job of leaning on others. And one of the things that I've done more of here over the last few years is look for other sage men that I can go to, guys that have lived a minute and been down that road that I could lean on their mentorship. Sadly enough, I don't know that we pay enough attention to this in our society. We're always so young, so quick to give the young people accolades. If you've ever watched the show America's Got Talent, it's hard for an older adult to beat the young kids that come on that show. Everybody loves the young kids that come on that show, and some of them are amazing, by the way. But the point is that wisdom and maturity and discernment are incredibly important. And I think what I would encourage men to do of any age is find somebody that can mentor you, find somebody that you can talk to, find somebody that you can go to seek out wisdom and advice. And what I can guarantee you will happen is your life will catapult as a result. You will accelerate because you're sitting and gaining wisdom that other people think only comes from YouTube or Google. I got news for you. It doesn't. Find a mentor who is wise, and you will jumpstart your life like you've never thought possible.
I think that is so true. And too many people do turn to the internet for those ideas and questions.
Of
And
course, if you do
I
go to
appreciate
YouTube, go to my YouTube page. That's what I would encourage you.
there you go. I like that. But and you mentioned something else that I treasure. It's men and women. We're so alike in so many ways. I'm not going to go into my speech on that, but it's men and women. We all have cultures. We all have learning. And it's what we do with those going forward, where we take them. We are in charge of our lives. So true. Thank you. All right. You know, mind, let's go to Rachel. Rachel, building on your perspectives and the things that you talked about today, what is one mistake that people seem to make the most when applying the advice that you're talking about?
They try
Building
to
on your
do,
ideas and
oh,
perspectives.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
No,
go,
I was
you
just going
go
to repeat
ahead.
it.
I just was getting really excited.
Go for it. I was just going to repeat what I just said. So if you've got it, please, I want to
Yeah.
hear it.
No, they try to do too much at once. That's the biggest thing when we're talking about getting out of your comfort zone, building resilience, even getting out of the fight or flight or triggered state. A lot of this, even when I talked about, setting your priority, the whole reason for that filter is to give you something simple and tangible to run your decisions through so that you delay and move out of some of that overwhelm and overthinking. And so when we're talking about, stress and all of these things, I see so many clients come to me and they go, this is my goal. And then they want to just bite off everything that they can to get to that goal as fast as possible. And from a neuroscience perspective, that just freaks out your entire system. It goes into overdrive. It's telling you that it thinks you're going to die because you've completely bombarded it with something that feels very impossible to do. So I say, make sure that it feels good to have done, not necessarily good to do, but that it also feels possible. It feels possible. If it feels possible, you can take one little step outside of your comfort zone. And as long as it feels possible to do and good to have done, meaning that you'll feel proud when it's over, you can meet a lot of that resistance face on and overcome it, but not if you think you're gonna, eat the whole elephant in one bite, so to speak. You got to just do it
Well
one
said.
small step at a time.
And just take it on, take that challenge and go forward with it. Excellent. Thank you. I think I've done that before, some of that myself. So, all right, Keith, with your experience, perceptions you give us today, things to work on, that your valuable perspectives, what warning sign do you think people often overlook? What warning sign do you think people often overlook?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's probably the importance of some of those self-care things I was thinking about and talking about earlier. We don't pay a lot of attention as we age. I'm 78, and a lot of things have snuck up on me. Um, I think they do with men in general because our priorities aren't aligned with a lot of these kinds of things, and I I think we are so goal oriented that the self care side of things doesn't rear its head the way it should. And then all of a sudden, like my heart attacks, they just sneak up on you, and then you suddenly have that immediate transition into, oh my God, what do I do now? Which uh, really sucks. I mean, there's no other word to describe it. When you suddenly are faced with a medical emergency like that, you suddenly have to face up to the fact that you got to change some stuff and you got to do it quickly. And you've got to get some attention and get it done. And 6 or 7 stints later, my heart is healthy and I'm doing better. But if we don't look at the things a little bit more in advance than we do, and I think this is where Mike's idea about mentoring, we need mentors to mentor us, but we can also become mentors. And sometimes we need to mentor ourselves. And that's kind of where self-care comes in. And I think that we don't always look at it with the urgency that we should when we're in our 50s, because that's when really life is going to start to change pretty quickly. It's amazing how fast time speeds up when you hit 60. I mean, just yesterday I was 60 and I'm 78. It's like, whoa, what happened? You know, take time to look at your with the micro and really look at yourself carefully and make some plans and adjust appropriately. Probably would be the way I'd look at it.
Very well said. I like what you're thinking, and that's a good point for us all to think about where we're going and what we're doing next. Very well said. All right, Mindy, I'd like to connect this with your work involving what can someone do within the next 24 hours using Sammy, maybe using something you're thinking about. What can someone do within the next 24 hours to build forward on their achieving unity, on their families? What can they do going forward in the next 24 hours?
Well, first of all, I would say that many of us tend to think that whenever we have a reaction or response that is negative or we don't like, and we realize that afterwards, and we have that, what did I just do? Not to think of that as a character flaw or a character problem. You didn't handle something well. And so this is where taking a moment in the next 24 hours, maybe to go back and reflect on something that didn't go as well as you had hoped for, that you intended to, whatever that is, and look at how you might be able to repair that. And what do I mean by repair? And this, we tend to make this more complicated. So if there's someone that we have snapped at, or maybe we had unrealistic expectations of, whether it's in our homes or in our workplaces, we can take a moment to go back and say to someone, for instance, if I snapped at my child, I was overwhelmed and I really didn't handle that well. And I'm sorry. And this is where it needs to be genuine, because you don't want to go then and say, well, it's because you made me angry that I was overwhelmed, and then tack that on, because then you're adding to it, and then it becomes a blame game rather than being something where you're being truly responsible and accountable for how you reacted. And then you can say what you'll do next. And so that could be, next time I'm going to tell you that I need a moment. Next time I'm going to step away. Next time I'm going to do whatever. And then when you do that, when you practice that real genuine repair, then you're building trust. And that's one step at a time. And then it's building resilience and also acknowledging that there will be a next time and that
Yes.
you're going to try better. Or you're going to
Excellent.
not try better, but you're going to try again, and hopefully that this next time will be better.
And we want to try to make it better. That's just hope. Let's do what you can to make it
Yes.
better. Mindy, thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. All right. Dr. Sina, from your professional experience, how does what you're talking about change from being a non-leader, being a leader? From your professional experience and your perspective, what does it change when someone's being a non-leader into being a leader?
I'd say ownership. I'd say ownership of the process, if that's what the deal is, or the situation from being not being a leader to being a leader. And when I say ownership, I don't mean things go well or how we like them, but they could go well, but I just mean ownership. And as I'm listening to what I'm hearing today, I kept listening to what Mike was saying about men and take ownership of I need to seek counsel. That's an ownership decision. I need to really get with another gentleman to really talk through this. That's an ownership decision. As I heard Rachel talking today, and she was talking about taking things through that filter, that's an ownership decision to me. Let me own how I want to start thinking through this in this season right now. Let me make that decision. Let me own that for me and my family. As I listen to Mindy talk about keeping yourself calm and saying out loud, I own what I did and I'm going to do something different. That was an ownership decision. And definitely Keith has been talking to me about ownership, owning that, you know what? Because Keith, I'm 60. So you spoke right into my life. Let me own what might be getting ready to happen to my body at this moment in time. So I would say moving from a, non-leadership position to a leadership or vice versa, owning that process or that mindset is very important.
It is. Thank you so much. And I love why you said that because sometimes we need to be a leader with ourselves in making those decisions to take that forward. I love that and what you're doing, what you're saying, and how we can make it happen. That is beautiful. It's what we can do. Each and every one of us going forward is to take these things, build on them. As we build unity within ourselves and with others, that's how we can make our lives grow for the better. So, as we get close to the end here, 4:18 or 18 minutes after, I should say, because we don't know what time frames that we're on. But I want to thank all of you, Mike, Rachel, Keith, Mindy, Dr. Webb, Dr. Sina, for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and your practical guidance. Because what you're talking about, what you're sharing with others, is so important in what we do and what we can do going forward. So, for everyone that is listening, I want to make sure we can go through each of these. It's just a different order, but everyone here has a free gift for you. What I want to do is to put that free gift into the chat and let each person talk about it for just a minute as we go forward. Because the things that we have given here is a gift to you, and we want to keep in touch with you and talk with each and every one of you as we all grow forward. So, Keith, let me go out here and start with you. Just let me copy that
Okay.
and put it out here in the chat. And tell us what is your gift today? What does it mean?
Scoot back here a second. It's my book. Whoop. Um, did it turn it backwards? Probably did. Don't you love the internet? Boy, it really advertises us so well. My book, Tenacity, I wrote it in 1995. I didn't publish it until 2018. Can you talk about procrastination in my life? Maybe we need to have a panel on that. Um, this was written when I was journaling. As Mike mentioned earlier, I was I had gone to Nepal for a second trip to climb. I was going to the Everest base camp. I didn't want to climb the mountain. I just wanted to go to base camp. And I got there and they had received about 5 feet of snow and they were canceling all of the trekking permits. So I had to redesign my trip, and I ended up going to a mountain that I never got to because I got lost. So I couldn't stop and ask anybody for directions, Mike. I tried. There was all kinds of Nepalese people, but they didn't speak English. So anyway, it's an interesting book. It uses my trip system, tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose, and tries to show through really funny stories ways to get through life and still make it to 78.
And congratulations to you for that and all that you have done. It is amazing, and the medical conditions you've gone through. So, thank you very much. All right, Mindy, let's talk about yours just quickly. Your free gift for today.
I do. And Mark, I know you're going to put that in the chat, correct?
They're coming up now.
Okay. So what I'm giving away is it's called the Heart Connection. And it's a reflection guide for you to look through the ways that you're showing up now and the ways that you would like to show up in the future. So when we were talking about those practical next steps, this is part of that. And it goes through each one of the letters of heart stands for a different, it's an acronym, so it stands for something different. So I hope that you'll be able to use this and really Mike had talked about journaling. So this is and also Keith. So using this as an opportunity to journal and to really get to know yourself.
Get to know yourself. That is excellent. Thank you for that, Mindy. Okay, next, Dr. Cena. What's your free gift for the day?
My free gift is a copy of my book, Leadership Her Way. And I want to tell a secret to the people who might decide to get it. So I'm going to lean in. It does have a picture of me in uniform. And because I'm a girl, some people think it's a gender-based leadership book, but it's not. It's a book about how women have interpreted leadership through her lens. And that could have been a man or a woman that shown that leadership. So that's what it's really about. Leadership her way.
That is beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Rachel, let's go with yours next. What is your free gift today?
Yeah, so I have a free foundations library, and it is a community where I post 20-minute videos, sometimes 15-minute videos. They're just bite-sized on neuroscience topics, concepts, different universal laws. We talk about everything from self-love to intuition to depression and just what's going on in the brain and what's going on in the internal emotional state. And so I just break those down. It's a very interactive space where you can ask questions, and then I post other videos on there. But it has lots of nuggets in there, as well as some bonus content as well for longer webinars I've done on like worthiness, just a lot of mindset stuff like we were talking about today. So perspective shifts and mindset work.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mike, so you have a free gift for us also. What is your free gift?
I do. I have an upcoming summit myself. Now, this was a recorded. We didn't have the pressure of all this live stuff going on. No, I couldn't get all those guys in the same room, but I put together a summit with my good friend Scott Schilling and Jim Britt, Bob Teedy, Bob Bodine, Tom Ziegler, Vince Miller are all going to be on that, and that is it's about a 4.5 hour event. These guys have just tremendous wisdom to offer everybody. So that is a free event that will be released on September 14th. So you can go out on the link and sign up for it, and you'll get that in your email box on September 14th. God willing, all the technology works out right. So.
Well, good. I hope it does too. I think it will. And good luck on that. Well, thank you all so much. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. And for all the audience and the people who listened to it today, those of you that are here, those that will listen to it later, because it will be on YouTube, for anybody here to share with you. So I hope you'll take at least one idea of what we talked about today in this conversation and truly turn it into action. Because you heard one of my questions earlier, what can we do in the next 24 hours to make achieving unity work for each and every one of us? Well, we want to identify what we must prepare. What do we want to prepare for? to protect what matters most. We want to make sure that we pause, as you heard earlier, so we can respond with clarity. As we respond with clarity, we'll give ourselves and others the support needed to recover. Once we do that, then we can take that next purposeful step forward, doing what we need to do, going forward, one step at a time. Please use the complimentary resources that were provided by our panelists today, and watch your email for information about the Stress Shield Leadership Resilience Starter Kit. Because everyone that was here will be receiving an email, feature of our guests as well. But learn and talk and build with us and be from us. But want to do so much for you in this. So if today's conversation can help someone you know, please share what you learned and invite that person into the next conversation. So before we go, can we share our favorite insight from today in the chat? So if anyone has an insight today, share it in the chat. If you're watching it on the recording, send that information to us. Send it to each and every one of us, all of our guests today, for the time that they spent coming to you. Let us know, because the Stress Shield is not about eliminating pressure. I think everyone talks about that today. It's about eliminating pressure. It's about helping people face pressure with greater, much greater ability to grow forward. It's about helping people face pressure with greater preparation, protection, clarity, resilience, confidence, and support. So together, we can strengthen unity and continue creating solutions, one reality at a time. We're getting here to the last couple of minutes. I want to thank you all again. Appreciate you, Renee and Lorenz, for putting this up together on the internet. But let's continue working together. You have the names of each and every one of us. If you want more information, contact me. I'll be glad to send you their names, their phone numbers, their email addresses, any other information that you need. Because again, everything works through unity. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this important conversation. To all the guests, appreciate it. Christina, Rachel, Mindy, Keith, Mike, let's continue working together one day, one step at a time. Thank you all. Cheers.